Hey everybody, what's up? How are you? Of course, if you're here live, that means it's Saturday morning. A little early in the West Coast, but nice and early, a nice early 11 a.m. on the East Coast. Welcome to Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast. I'm really excited to say that this has been we're going on. I was checking. We're almost at our 51st episode. I think this is our 51st episode. And below, I have, as we keep doing this so well, having guests on the show, I have Maddie from TikTok, who's a very, very big, crucial part of the awesome retro community on TikTok. Maddie, what's up? How are you today? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing great, Andy. Thanks for having me on the show, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, man. So before I kind of go into, obviously, I want to talk to you about TikTok. We want to talk about the retro community. I ask every guest one simple question: can you tell us a story that connected you to video games as a kid? What was the spark or a memory from when you were younger that really kick-started your whole kind of love of retro gaming?
There's a lot of stories, but the biggest one is pretty much the first one, and it was goodness. I don't remember how old my brother and I were, but my dad. It was slightly after Christmas, or my dad's birthday, perhaps, and it was in the '80s. Obviously, Nintendo had come out. He had gotten it, but he didn't set it up. He just had it like in the closet. So like one day, out of the blue, he just goes into the closet and pulls out the original NES system, sets it up, and we start playing Super Mario. And we are just sitting there with my dad and my brother and we're just playing and having a blast. And then he pulls out Legend of Zelda and starts playing that as well. And I have like some really fond memories of just sitting back, watching my dad play Zelda, trying to figure out all the dungeons and, like swapping out the games, playing Duck Hunt and all that stuff. So it was like those three right off the bat got me into gaming.
And did you like what was your console that represents your generation, like where you started?
So that's tough. So I was born in '84. So
Oh, you're not
technically,
that much
age
older
wise,
than I'm younger than me. I'm
yeah,
81, so we're not too far
yeah,
apart.
yeah. So like introduced to me was the original NES. So like my dad had that. So like that was big for me because we had that for a while. But my brothers and I both got a Super Nintendo for our birthday because our birthdays are a week apart. So for our birthday, we both got Super Nintendo. And I feel like Super Nintendo is more of the like generational one for my age group, but I have a special affinity for the original NES.
And you said that, and I know off we talked about that the NES is one of your focus collected, like you focus on collecting a lot of NES.
Yes. Yeah, there's just something about the 8-bit for me that has always connected. And I really do think it's like that first time my dad pulled it out of the closet and I heard the Legend of Zelda music and Super Mario's music. And like I always just love the little MIDI format for the 8-bit games that it just has such a good hook for the music. And music is a really big thing when it comes to video games for me. Like if it has that hook line that can really get me involved and make me want to play more, I'm all about it. Like Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, also cartoons that I grew up with, like those were on Saturday mornings or after you got out of school. So like you'd go home and you watch DuckTales and then you'd play DuckTales on Nintendo. So like the NES really has that extra oomph to me that made me want to collect it more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm as you know, like I'm a big Sega Saturn fan, and that's kind of like my shtick. But I do collect almost everything. I've been focusing on NES again. I've been looking at a lot of NES and noticing that it's becoming popular again. I think I told you that off that. But and you're an East Coaster, right? You grew up in the
Yep.
Northeast. What was it like buying games as a kid in New York? I know you're from New York. What any memories of special stores that you used to go to? Anything that in particular brings back memories when purchasing games as a kid?
So big memories were in when I was growing up in Queens. There was the Metro Mall, which is over by Christ the King High School in my neighborhood, and it's this giant mall, but it had a giant Toys R Us in it.
Ooh.
They had the old setup for the Toys R Us for video games was like there was a whole video game section, and you just pick a ticket when you wanted to get a game, and you go over to this booth, which was just a wall of you could see all the games back behind. It was like a security booth almost, and you give this ticket. It was like the magic ticket, like oh, I have this is Legend of Zelda 2. I want to get Legend of Zelda 2. Okay. And this girl would, or guy that was working there would just go back and like they'd disappear for a few seconds behind the mysterious wall of video games and come back. And then there it was in its cartridge in a plastic case. They'd pop it out of the security case and then give you the game, pay for it right there and walk out. And I always thought that was the coolest thing. I wanted to see what was behind the wall, like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like what's behind here? What magical games are there that I don't know about that are out on the floor,
Dude,
I always thought that was pretty neat.
Toys R Us had the best like feeling of buying video games. Like that's a lot of my memories from there. A really funny memory is, do you remember Electronic Boutique?
Oh yeah.
So what was funny about the early days of Electronic Boutique was that they wore ties and like nice shirts. And like, It was like weird. Like, I guess that was normal. Like you had to like dress up to sell stuff. Now when you go to a GameStop, everyone that works there looks like they're from Lord of the Rings with their beards and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, or they're nerds. I don't know. But cool, man. So that's really good. Thanks for sharing your retro history. Obviously very important to my show. But I guess what's really interesting is, I would, because we've had a lot of TikTokers on my show, and just, I think, especially in 2020, the explosion of kind of like the app itself and how big it kind of helped a lot of people grow, and a lot of new people became very popular stars on TikTok. But what's your TikTok story? Because, and just to give the audience some, I have your TikTok here, and I know in chat, if you do !Nui, we have your TikTok here. Just
nice.
give us your TikTok story and what it's all about.
Yeah, so I started TikTok back in September, early October last year. I didn't really know what was going on. It was just kind of like pandemic was winding on and just going on forever. I didn't know what to do. I was just getting stir crazy in my house. So I was like, let me download this thing finally and just kind of mess around with it. So I've always loved, like voice acting and like, comics and Jim Carrey and all that growing up in the 90s. So I was like, let me just mess around and do skits. And I saw some of the trend videos that people were doing, like the skateboard with the ocean spray.
That was a huge blow up.
That was right around the time when I got into it. So like I did a spoof of that where I was like on the skateboard and I acted like I got hit by a car, with the music playing in the background. And I was like, okay, so this is making me laugh. This is something to do for a little bit. But I didn't really feel like that was what I wanted to do. I was just kind of figuring out the app. So I did this one video where I was playing Sega Genesis and Sonic stops and how he starts stamping his feet. And I just kind of make fun. I was like, come on, Sonic, it's been 25 years. I understand. I just went to go get a snack. I'll be right back. Jeez. And I laughed so hard at that. It did fairly well for having no followers too. I don't know if the algorithm just, like shined its graces down for the moment on that. But that's where I kind of decided like, hey, like I have all these retro video games. I love playing this. Let me pull them out of the basement, and out of storage and start playing them again and showing people these games and having fun with it and doing my funny little skit thing. Like the other thing I had mentioned earlier just before we started was I love everything 80s too. So I did the AHA music video, Take On Me, and I kind of did my spoof of it as if I'm playing on the arcade and suddenly I get sucked into that world. And that's kind of where like the character skit video started from that. So then I'm running around, the guy with the pipe wrench is chasing me and all that fun stuff. But I've slowly kind of crafted my way from that and figured out what I want to do. I have characters now, and it's just an all-around fun time. Even with the lives are the best thing ever. I love doing that.
Here
and
you are with Super Lit Mario, who was on the show, and I love that.
Oh yeah, that
this one was funny. This is a good one, by the way.
that's the one right there. That's the one that just like kind of has changed everything in the last week. Like it just took off, and I think it's got like 1.3 million views. I'm blown away by it.
So are you going to start doing the Luigi thing? I think that's
so.
funny.
I've done a couple other Luigi videos here and there. It's a character that I wanted to do because I'm a huge Luigi fan. I always thought he was the better brother.
Sure.
But yeah, like I don't want to rely on that too much. Like I like to alternate and like change things up. So I did that. Like that's great that video took off like that. I don't want that to be like a mainstay character like that has to be played all the time. Like I want to develop and do other things. Like I did my Top Gun video. I've had a blast doing that.
I think I saw. Is that the one with where you have the I think I just passed that. You had the garage open up and there's like Top Gun.
Yeah, like
you're wearing the suit. Wait, let me find that again.
Yeah.
A second ago. Yeah, I like your characters, man. Keep doing that. I think that's really great. I think I was here.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Yep.
Where are you getting all these outfits, man?
So that's the thing too, is like I've had like, like Halloween costumes, or I've had like, items of clothing that I've picked up over the years that I just like held on to. And like now it's all mixing together. Like I'm making like these character outfits, like the detective guy that I do, like, like, listen here, do you remember Hogan's Alley, kid? And like, I'll throw the voice in or whatever and have fun with that.
It's really great.
Yeah.
It's very much, I think, like, it's funny. Super Lit Mario is great, but he's kind of like, and I talked to him about this. He teeters on a like more of an adult side of things. Like he's very vulgar at times. Like he does like
Yes.
vulgar things, but that's like his thing. But and then the 1980s gamer, who of course was on the show too, he's a little bit more direct, where you're kind of like his style, but instead you're doing more characters, and I think that's a really cool direction. I think it's unique. So just
Yeah.
from me being a part, and I think I told you, like, it's really amazing to see so much growth, especially in the last like few months, of more retro gamers that are coming onto TikTok. I swear that about a year ago there was not a lot of retro TikTokers. It was a little bit smaller community. Now it's growing immensely, and I guess what's next for you? Are you just going to keep pushing this out? Are you looking to expand in any other way, or are you just going to continue to do your, because you do lives on TikTok as well, playing games, right?
Yeah. My whole focus getting into, I didn't step on that, was that when I saw that there was an opportunity to do lives, like I am literally just setting this up. This is my iPhone on a camera stand, and that's how
Sure.
I went about doing it. And I just wanted to have fun. And part of having fun is interacting with people. I've always been, I don't know if the term is social butterfly, but like I want to be social. I want to have a great time, and I want to share these experiences with people. So my goal when I started out and really got going was I need to get to that 1,000 followers so I can start sharing these lives with people, because that's the threshold that you need on TikTok in order to go live. So once I started doing that, I found an amazing community of people that's come together, and we have a blast on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays, and just play games. Like I've grown with what I'm doing with that now too. Like I do Zelda and coffee in the morning on Monday and Tuesdays, which has become a great, fun way to play the Zelda games and start going through all those in order. And it's just been fantastic. Like I love playing these games and just chatting with people. Like the biggest thing is like chatting too. Like I try to play the game, but also I'm not going for a speed run or necessarily to like beat the game or do the best thing ever. It's try to, I want to talk with you guys and see what your experiences were when you first got the game and when you first played, just like you were asking me earlier.
Yeah. No, it's great, man. Keep it up. I really enjoy watching your videos. I'm glad, and that's what I'm trying to do on my podcast, is kind of bring more retro TikTokers on here, because I love the TikTok retro community. I know you're not on Twitter, but Twitter, you see, what I've noticed is that retro gaming in social media have very strong communities and very positive communities. For instance, on Twitter, which can be the most horrible place to see tweets. Like there's terrible tweets on Twitter, right? There's some terrible
Yep.
stuff. But the retro community on Twitter is outstanding and amazing. And then it crosses across onto TikTok. Just I've never seen more just awesome people. Just really, we all love nostalgia, and there's just something like lighthearted about that. And I just glad to see like you kind of like bring awareness to more retro gaming. We need more of this, because at some point, retro collecting right now, for instance, it's getting very expensive, and it's getting harder to collect games, right? But I think there's just an awareness to like new generations understanding like the history of games, and just your simple videos are helping people kind of learn about games, just like what I do as well. So yeah, I think that I'll have to talk to you off the show, but I have an idea for like a show that would involve multiple people at the same time that are talking, kind of discussion based show with retro collectors. So I might have you come on that show when I make the announcement for that, because I'm working on
Yeah,
something
sure.
behind the scenes. But yeah, Matt, anything else pertaining to TikTok before we moved on to the topic today? Because I'm excited about this topic, and it's going to be easy to talk about. It's going to be simple to talk about, but some people might have differences in feelings when it comes to controllers, because that's the topic today, controllers. Right off
Yep.
the top, what does that make you feel? Like when I say this is about the evolution of controllers, what's your first thought in your head?
There are a couple of controllers that are my mainstays that I go to right off the top of my head when I think about that. The real NES controller being one because it's probably the most iconic. And then like I can jump like immediately like two other controllers pop in my head: the Nintendo 64 controller and the Dreamcast controller. I really like both of those, which I can't wait to talk about that in a little bit more depth.
All right. Well, for me, I think that one of the coolest parts of video games are the controllers and how they've all been different shapes and sizes over the course of the years. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through a little bit of the history of the controller. I've kind of, and there's going to be controllers that I'm not going to touch here, but we're going to start with ones you might not know about or you might know about. So the first one is this little box. You know which one this is from?
I've seen that like once before, but I can't really remember.
This is the
What it's from.
Magnavox Odyssey.
Yes.
One of the
Okay.
first home consoles. And basically it's a little controller with two kind of ends where you would play Pong and you could like twist it. So we don't have a stick here. It's pretty much like an odd controller. So I'll show a video. This is kind of like this is a 1972 commercial for the Magnavox Odyssey. So you'll kind of get an idea of how the controller works. If you saw
They put the overlay screen on. That's hilarious. Too.
Yeah, you put this overlay on your television. That's the graphics. But that's a good look at, you know, the kind of usage of this type of controller. Very odd looking, but definitely still feels like it gives that console vibe. Like, hey, this is a console. There's controllers, and this is 1972, so that's like, you know, really early days. But what do you think of the look of this thing? Is it ugly?
Well, I mean, it's just you're just masking different ways to play Pong, which is hilarious. But it's ingenious in the way because like that's all they had. Like, you know, 72 that's coming out. That does look like a legit console, and I'm sure that if you know I was. Happy. Yeah, if I was that dude sipping on my coffee in 1972, I'd be like, this is as great as it's going to get, which is a recurring theme with every system that comes out. Don't you always say that? It's like, this is the greatest it's ever going to get. I can't believe it's so real. Yeah.
And hey, Sherry, thanks for stopping by. Great to have you as a first-time listener. Yeah, so this one, I never really played the Odyssey. I don't think I've ever really played the Odyssey. I've seen it in person, but I've never really played it. And to be honest, I don't know how popular this would be these days by putting a weird overlay on your screen.
Would it even fit on a flat screen even too?
Probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's virtually a podcast.
Duct tape it on.
Says it's the a sketch of controllers. I agree with that. That's a great way to form it. So now we're going to move a little bit forward and we're going to talk about, so before Atari released the 2600, they had an in-home console Pong, and this is what it looked like. It was literally a plug-and-play Pong game, but instead they had the paddles that you pull off, and I think I have a video here that kind of gives you a little bit of a walkthrough of what this looks like.
In the Pong console.
Have you ever seen this one, Matt?
I've seen this one, and I think a funny story is that I think that 70s show covered this one where Kelso and Red got tired of playing Pong, so they wanted to shorten the bumpers, and they figured out a way to hack it.
I think I saw that episode. I forgot all about that. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yep.
I think though, I mean, a little bit of an upgrade from the Odyssey, but still there's nothing much to it. It's literally a dial. And it's funny that the controller as we know today really wasn't formed yet. It's like, imagine that controllers were still dials. That would be really weird.
It would be, but there are, what is it? Isn't there one that kind of had, well, there are dial aspects that are on controllers these days too. Now I'm looking down at what we got. It's just that they've kind of just turned into joysticks more or less.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything new that still has the paddle feel, but no, yeah, this one was definitely worth mentioning. So now we're going to move up to, let's see, where is it? Oh yeah, wait, I pulled this up too. You could see kind of like a few other versions of controllers. Look at these. Some of these I've never seen before. They're just weird. They're just odd. It's just weird. But look how I actually think like you could definitely tell these are from the 70s, right? The 70s vibe. It's got all the
Well, they all wanted to have that futuristic feel to it, like you're on a spaceship.
yeah,
Like everything looks like you'd find that like at the control panel in like a Star Trek or Star Wars, movie.
so weird. Um, so have you ever seen the Telstar Arcade? Have you ever seen
I have
this?
not. That looks fun.
Yeah, so this one was a Coleco system that had 3 different types of controllers, I believe. So, or it was 2. I forget. No, it's 3. You got the paddles, or the turning paddles, right? And then you have a wheel, and then you have a gun. So there were 3 games included in the Telstar. I believe I have a commercial for us yet. So you get an idea of what this is.
Yeah.
I don't know how expensive these are. These are tough to find. But yeah, obviously you could see you could play a driving game. But
I'm gonna have to assume that back in the day that was a pricey item.
yes, and I think it was very popular. But it had a light gun. It even had a light
That's
gun.
wild.
Yeah, and you see the cartridge. The cartridge is like a weird triangle.
Yeah.
It's like some odd triangle. The Telstar Arcade. So had to show you that one. But now we're going to get into when controllers, I think, are starting to come to life and be a little bit more form the way. So do you have any memory of this controller right here, Matt?
I have plenty of memories of the dude in Pitfall falling into the pit because of that controller.
So this is the Atari 2600 controller. Simple in design, simple in use, and really, I think it's really the start of what I think of a controller. And obviously when you think of retro controllers, this is always the one. Like the emoji, I believe, looks like this one. It's like the arcade stick. It's got that vibe. It's a button, it's a stick. Because at this time, the arcade always had, even when you had these consoles coming out, the arcade started to have a joystick and a button, right? So the
Yep.
Atari 2600 controller is one of my favorites.
And the computer.
This is like an odd commercial. Let's see here. Was
I've seen this commercial. Yeah.
yeah, so I have a fond memory. It was one of my so the 2600 is a system that I'm fondly connected to, and I just remember being a really young kid, and it was easy for me to know how to use it cuz all I had to worry about was moving and pressing one button. Moving one button. So, it had an ease of use about it, and I also love the 2600. I just got a new 2600, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got a 2600 again. Got it back in my life. But here is, I would say, the king, the queen and the king of the crop, right?
That's right.
What does this mean to you right here, this photo right here, Matt? Tell me what
It
this
means
means to you.
that's childhood right there. Like you got the controller. It's so simplistic and it does so much. I mean, think of the variety of games. There's over 800 something Nintendo games, and this works with pretty much all of them in some capacity. Even with the light gun games, you can use that to control the ducks and duck hunt with player 2 and stuff and stuff like that,
Oh, yeah,
which a lot of people don't know about, which is pretty neat. But I mean, that controller is controlling Link and going through dungeon after dungeon and saving, the princess. It's saving, Princess Toadstool with Mario. It's playing as, Scrooge McDuck with DuckTales. Like it has so much memory to it and so much, such a connection to your childhood. But also like there's people now, like I've had on my stream, like some, like younger kids that like grew up and like their first system was the Wii, and they're finding out about these games now and they're trying it. And they're like, these games are hard, but I'm having a blast. So they're getting memories too that they're going to have 10 years down the line from playing original Nintendo, which I think is like the best thing ever to hear on a stream.
Yeah, and also aesthetically, it had a really cool 80s vibe. It represented
It
the
did.
80s so well. Like this, like Nintendo, I don't know. I would have wanted to be a fly on the wall when they introduced, like, they probably had a lot of prototypes, but imagine that you're in a room and they're showing the different controller styles for the new Nintendo Entertainment System in America. Because don't forget, the Famicom looked a lot different, and they they wanted to make a system that kind of Americans would be attached to and like fit, and they really hit it out of the park with this system. Like when it came to America and they released the Nintendo Entertainment System, and just the little gray with the black and the red buttons, like there's just something beautiful about it. And
Yeah.
to this day, this aesthetic represents retro more than any aesthetic I think out there, you know? So
Oh, I agree 100%. Well, that's also too is like Nintendo really took things over back then with the NES. I mean, everybody's parents back in the day, no matter what system you had, just called it a Nintendo,
yeah,
even if it
that's
wasn't. Like, you know, like you're playing, oh, those kids are playing on the Nintendo again. It's like it's Sega, but okay, whatever. But like that's the thing is it became so iconic, and it was just like the sleekest design, the coolest color palette for the time that just screams retro now.
it's
There it is. There's the commercial with the gun too.
yeah, this is a famous commercial. The light gun, I guess we could say, is very important controller as well.
Yep.
Do you
Playing Hogan's
consider
Alley.
light guns controllers?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely do. Like, I mean, like you can't play certain games without them. So I mean, it's just you can actually I can't remember which Nintendo game it was though too. Oh, it's Freedom Force. The only thing you can do is choose the screens with the light gun. So it's a controller. You know, you
Right.
can only you pick your options with it. So yeah, it's a controller at the end of the day.
How about this one, Matt? Does this one ring any bells for you?
So my uncle has that. I've never really used it, never really played it. It's always been in a box in his house when we were younger. We'd already moved on to Sega Genesis at that point, but I know he's got it. Just had never really played with it.
The Sega Master System, for anyone that doesn't know, this is the, competitor 8-bit system that Sega put out. And I think it had a typical Sega vibe about it, you could tell. Like, it's almost opposite the Nintendo one, it's like, here's Nintendo and then here's Sega's version. And I think that a lot of people just are not familiar with the Sega Master System. I had a friend that lived across the street from me, and I would play the Sega Master System at his house, and I was always blown away by it, but I never had it myself. It's a system I want to get in my collection, though. But I have a few Master System games, though, that I've collected. I have Outrun for the Master System, and I forget what the other one is, but I definitely have the Outrun for Master System. So yeah, not much to talk about here because I think a lot of people just don't have a lot of memories of it. At least the people that I
That's
know.
that's exactly it. I think it was like I'm I don't have the actual facts to it, but like I said, like my uncle had it, but we never really used it or played it when it was over. Like things had already moved on. Like Nintendo won that battle, and like then they moved on to Sega Genesis. So like everybody and their friends started picking up a Sega Genesis, and you had that instead, and this fell to the wayside real quick.
Yeah, exactly. And then they moved right on to like trying to get the Genesis going. But the Master System, it was around, and it did have some good games. But yeah, this is one that I really want to get in my collection for sure. But here's a good look at the Master System, what it looked like. It was cool, sleek. It was kind of like, very Sega, very Sega.
Yep, definitely very Sega.
All right, but what about this one, Matt?
That one is
this one.
I think about when I see that controller is Golden Axe and Streets of Rage.
Now, would you say that this controller kind of gives those nostalgic vibes just like the NES controller would, but for the 16-bit era? Like,
yes.
I think Sega kind of like, okay, we're going to get to the NES controller, which was popular, but I think that in the 16-bit era, the Sega Genesis controller kind of is the leader in like the nostalgic vibes. Like this represents that generation to me. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, you and I are on the same page on that. When I think of 16-bit, I go to Sega Genesis first. And like that whole era is more Sega Genesis. There was a lot of games on Genesis that I felt looked and performed better than the Super Nintendo. Even though the Super Nintendo technically had more hardware, if I recall correctly. I don't know the specs off the top of my head, but I always felt like certain games looked, performed, and played and sounded better. Like you can't go wrong with the Streets of Rage music. Like that's like some of the most iconic video game music ever. And like sometimes the Super Nintendo would feel drowned out in comparison for like their music. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a preference. Maybe it's just because I had more experience with the Genesis before Super Nintendo, necessarily since before I got one. I'm trying to think of how the timeline went for picking up that. I was definitely playing Genesis before I played Super Nintendo, I feel. But yeah, like there's definitely that vibe there that like that's more iconic to me.
It was a pretty cool controller. I mean, it was really, really like kind of like, I don't want to say revolutionary, but it just kind of like was really cool. I felt like,
Yep.
yeah, we're upgrading. Look at this. It's cool. The Genesis. Genesis does. I remember when I told my dad, hey, Dad, this new system came out called Genesis. He goes, and he's like, what is this? I was like, what is that? I was like, it's the Genesis, you know. He's like, is that Nintendo? I was like, yes, I guess. And so here's the other one. What do you think? I mean, obviously the Genesis kind of stands out a little bit more, but I still think there's kind of like some nostalgic, beautiful aesthetics to the Super Nintendo controller. What does this one mean to you from taking a look at it?
So Nintendo is really smart because Sega has A, B, and C for the buttons, and they have a directional pad. Like this one started adding the L and R buttons, and it kind of did change the game a little bit for controls and what you had going on in certain games. Like if you played Pilot Wings, you could change the camera angles with L and R and stuff like that. So it became it's a controller where you got more control, if that makes sense. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
true.
you started like becoming more immersed into the game with it. Whereas Sega was just kind of more the same. And like, you know, like you were just doing side scrollers and beat 'em ups and Space Harrier and stuff like that in Sonic. And this one was like, oh, I'm getting into a 3D world now with the games I'm playing, and I'm able to manipulate that with the L and R buttons and the X and Y buttons.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess it was a little bit advanced compared to the original Genesis controller, actually, if you think about it. I have fond memories of Mario Kart with this controller. That's what I have. And that's another system I don't have out of my collection. It's Super Nintendo, and it's one I've been dying to get back in my collection.
Really? You don't have it?
I don't have. I had one, but it was broken, and then I have a bunch of games, so I still have a lot of the games, but I don't have a NES. So there's like, I got almost every other console besides the NES. I have the Genesis, and everything else I have the Dreamcast, the GameCube, I have the Nintendo Entertainment System, but yeah, I don't have a Super Nintendo, believe it or not. So yeah, it's one I need to get back in my collection.
Nice. You'll get one soon enough.
Yeah,
they're not too hard.
No, they're not too hard, and I'm okay buying like one of the really yellow. You ever see the ones that just like turn yellow? Like they're just like they just like become so discolored.
Yeah, mine looks like a shell of its former self, but it still works fine.
Yeah, of course. What do we got next? So now this is one I've shown on the show before. This is the Sega Activator, which is just like a ridiculous, like kind of like, I don't know how to explain this, but it's supposed to be like a Kinect, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna play. I think it's Holyfield boxing, and as you can see, they're punching the air. And in order to walk, I think you have to kick your foot a little bit, like in whatever direction.
I only see that as like falling into the TV back then, because you're going to be swinging.
They're all like, "Oh my god, yes, this is great. This is great. This is a product where this is what I would play." This is so weird. This is one of the only videos where they like show you it, like in detail. Nice sweater, right? Look at that.
Yeah, it's very 90s. Or late 80s, I can't tell.
Well, here's the one that you were talking about, and probably a very important one is the N64 controller, with the three things. What does this tell you, Matt?
So there's a lot of people that dislike this controller, and I think that they're not looking at it as what it meant and how revolutionary it was. Like you literally started changing the game with this one, and like kind of like the Super Nintendo controller, this took it to the next level. You started feeling like you were more in the game. You had more 3D elements, obviously, because we went to Nintendo 64, so you have Super Mario running around, and now you can take the the C buttons, and you can start looking around the world with the directional pad too. And then you had the first like real joystick that was introduced. PlayStation was still running the directional pad at the time, so like this really started getting you more involved in the games, and you could look around those environments.
Well, I think that my fondest memory of this controller is playing Mario 64 for the first time and being blown away. And
Yeah.
then I always thought the controller was kind of weird at first, but then when Smash Brothers came out and like how they mapped all the buttons for a game like that, and like that whole yellow controller pad kind of reminds me of GameCube. They kind of like moved that over to GameCube.
Yes. Yeah, it did that. Like also the other thing is too is like you're holding a controller like this. And you got your directional that you can walk around with,
So
and then you have the trigger on the back. The first time like a system had like an actual trigger like this. So you're playing GoldenEye, and you're there and you're in the moment. It's like, oh man, he's coming. Oh, he's odd job. I have to look down. I have to try to shoot. And you're like hitting the button as fast as you can. You're yelling at the screen. Your friends yelling at you for watching their screen. I mean, it brought a whole new depth to the gameplay. Whereas, you were just pressing the A button before to shoot. Now you're actually like, oh, I'm pulling the trigger and the machine gun's going and all this stuff. And like, you're just in the moment. Like your imagination takes hold a little bit too, which I think has always been the trick with Nintendo that has gotten more immersion, is that like you will be playing and like you will literally get sucked into that world. And like they always have these little tricks that like bring you in just a little bit more, like especially when you move up to like the Wii remotes and the motion controls. Like you're in Wii bowling, your little avatar's throwing that, but you're standing there throwing it and almost rolling yourself into the TV.
Yeah. No, but and I have my red and Nintendo 64. That's the one I have, and I have a few cool controllers for the 64. You know what I play still today on the 64? As I play No Mercy and all the wrestling games. I was a huge fan of the wrestling games on the 64.
Great games.
Those were, and the controller was amazing for them.
Yep.
The amount of moves you can do, the customization, fantastic. No Mercy is one of my favorite games of all time, so I still play that. Still play No Mercy all the time. So one thing I did see that Tarantula in chat mentioned the Super Scope 6. Any memories of this? Did you ever have it?
My cousins had it. And we go over there, and there was this one game. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was on like the Super Scope 6 like pack that had multiple games. Like you were like fighting Gundams, I think, or like some kind of Mech Warrior game.
Oh, okay.
Where you're shooting. Yeah, and it was crazy because like you're doing this whole side scroll and you're fighting and you got the Super Scope and you're like just trying to blast all these guys. It was a lot of fun, but I felt like Nintendo kind of abandoned that a little too quickly. Like I don't remember anything else really coming of it. There's like maybe 1 or 2 games, if I recall.
Yeah, there wasn't much to it, and I don't know. It's one thing I've never really seen very often in a retro store or anything like that. I would like to get one.
Same.
I once did like a Photoshop of Scarface, the famous shot of him at the end with the big gun, but instead I switched it out for a Super Scope.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have to find that meme, but that was a good one. And thanks Tarantula for reminding us of that one. So, as you know, I'm a huge Sega Saturn fan, right, Matt?
Yeah, now we're getting into it. Here we go.
Do you know what this is right here? This is the Japanese Sega Saturn controller. Okay, and this one was fantastic. Just a really cool looking controller, well built. Where the American one was a little bulkier, but it still was good. Any memories of the Saturn? I know you said that you weren't that much into the Saturn, but did you have any memories of a kid playing it or any friends that had it?
So my cousins had that also, and I didn't see them that often, but I played Virtua Cop once or twice with it. So yeah, so I didn't really have much experience with the controller itself.
I still have the light gun.
Yeah, I played it with the light gun, and but yeah, bulky controller, big time bulk. I would take the Japanese controller hands down every day over that monster.
Yep. And I do have both. I have the Japanese one, but it's a beautiful. Japanese one's beautiful, and it plays on. You could use the Japanese one on the American one as well. So it was very interchangeable. Jaguar. Can't not talk about this ridiculous controller. Did you ever?
So
I had a Jaguar, which I don't.
Oh, you did?
Which I don't anymore. I wish I still had my Jaguar. I do not. There was a game called Alien vs Predator for the Jaguar that I really liked, and I mean, it had like this keypad even, and you would put this like overlay thing on top of it. Any memory of the Jaguar for you? Did you ever put
I
this in
didn't
your
have any
hands?
experience with Jaguar. No, wish I did, but maybe one day.
Did you ever get a chance to hold this controller?
No, it looks like
It was
it's a beefy
insane.
controller to hold.
It was beefy, but it wasn't uncomfortable because
Oh, okay.
the main buttons were pretty easy to reach, but it was just odd that you had like almost like a phone pad here. Um, but I give Atari credit for being a little bit out of the box on this one, but it's still kind of a ridiculous controller.
Yeah.
But moving on to one that I love and has still been used today because of Super Smash Brothers is the GameCube
There you
controller.
go.
What are your memories? What are your memories of the GameCube controller?
So I enjoy the GameCube controller a lot. However, I am a solid believer in the Wavebird, which I have right here too.
Ooh,
This thing,
one of the greatest
yeah,
wireless controllers to ever live.
dude. I've been playing Resident Evil on my stream with this. We've been going through the Resident Evil games, so I did 4, and I've been playing Resident Evil 0 just as of late. And I'm pretty sure these batteries that are in this are the same batteries from about 7 or 10 years ago from the last time I played it, before I put it into storage.
Oh my
And it
god,
just keeps going.
that's
It just keeps going. It doesn't stop. The Wavebird, I don't know what voodoo magic they've done with this controller, but it literally, the batteries last forever. I could never get my Xbox controllers batteries to last. I could never get my PlayStation 4 batteries to last now that are in there. I feel like I'm always charging the thing. This thing I throw on, I play for 8 hours of Resident Evil, and it still is like, yeah, keep going. Let's go. Come on, we got more battery life.
yeah.
But yeah, the GameCube controller in itself too is fantastic. But once we got to that Wavebird, and it just you were wireless and you're walking around the house playing Resident Evil 4, forget it.
Yeah, and it worked really well, right? For a wireless controller,
Yeah.
it still works. I have the Wavebird too, but I'm missing the infrared controller input, whatever you call that. I have
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I have everything, but I guess I can eBay that and find that somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure it's because it's just a channel reader, so it's
Yeah,
only you just
but it's my original Wavebird, so it's kind of cool that I still have it. And that's a controller that's sought after. That's a respected controller that people loved, man. There's a famous ad. Let me see if I can find it. Wavebird bathroom ad. Have you ever seen the bathroom ad that they put out?
I think so, a long time
Let
ago.
me show you. Here it is. Let's see. Oh. Where is it? Oh, there it is. God, how many links? Ah, here it is. So he's literally on the toilet, and his CRT is mirrored off of the door, so he's playing the Wavebird from the toilet. Nothing
That's
comes
awesome.
between a man and his game. Not roofs, not walls, not even nature. So really cool ad. Really cool ad for its day. But I'm kind of surprised that Nintendo would do an ad like this, but you know.
Well, so that's during the time when GameCube came out. They wanted to break away from the fact that they were just a kid's system, and that's why they sought so hard to get the Resident Evil title from PlayStation.
That's true.
So they wanted exclusivity with the Resident Evil remake, and then they had Resident Evil 4 that was only going to be on GameCube. It's like, also at the time they had Eternal Darkness come out, which is a great survival horror game too, that had a lot of freaky elements happen with it. So they were trying to push the boundaries a little bit. They wanted like, no, we're for adults too. And you know, like it worked, but at the same time, you know, like with a title like Resident Evil, like that had to go, you know, worldwide at some point and get on all the systems.
Yep. How about the old Duke, they call it? The original Xbox controller, the big old Duke.
I am not the biggest fan of that one.
This one was huge. Like
it was.
It was huge, but you know what? Actually, for first-person shooters like Halo, it actually worked really well. It formed in your hand pretty well, but to be honest, it was a little ridiculous. And this is one that I need to get again. I need to just buy it just for nostalgic purposes. But what do you think of Xbox Original, by the way, Matt? Did you have any connection to it? Did you own it? Did you play it?
I do. Yeah, my brothers and I had one. And I didn't play it as much. My younger brother was more into Xbox at the time. That was kind of around the time where I started falling off with video games for a little bit. And like I took a couple of years off and was just busy doing other stuff and, you know, running around and chasing after the ladies.
Of course.
but yeah, so he was always playing the original Xbox. And the one game that I do remember playing, I still have, is The Suffering. which is another, dark, survival horror, first person shooter type game. And that was good. I just always felt that the controller was very bulky, but the games that were on that Xbox were very good, were very well done. A lot of them, like you said, Halo. I mean, everybody knows Halo.
Yeah. There was also a great racing game, which I have still, Project Gotham Racing. I had fun memories of that with this. And that's a game series I'd like to see come back. I really enjoyed Project Gotham. It was fun. It was competitive. But it's interesting about the original Xbox. It's a system I'm paying attention to from a collecting standpoint. That, Matt, believe it or not, the original Xbox is now becoming kind of a collectible, and a lot of retro collectors are now looking towards original Xbox games and also Xbox systems. So it's also one that I don't have. I don't have the system still, but I have a bunch of the original Xbox games. So can't talk about controllers without mentioning the good old Duke. And now we're going to move into what you mentioned earlier, which was a very different type of controller, which is, of course, when Nintendo surprised us with this whole Wii experiment that turned out to be one of the most sold systems in the history of video games. What are your thoughts when you were young, or whenever you saw this, when you saw the Wii controllers for the first time? What were your thoughts?
So I had to try them. I was like, I got to see what this is about. And then, like you get into the Wii and you create your little avatar and you can start playing these games like tennis and bowling and everything like that. And I could not believe how responsive it was. Because up until that point, we had what we saw earlier, what Sega did was like that ring, and you're boxing around and you're being like a big doofus, trying not to fall into your TV. And this was just so crisp, and they nailed every part of it. Like, I literally felt when I played Wii bowling that I was actually throwing the bowling ball down the lane. Like I felt the release and everything with that. So I'm going through the whole motion as if I actually was at a bowling alley in my living room. And I'm like, this is wild. Like, they nailed it. It's to a T. And I couldn't believe it at the time. I was like, okay, here we are. We are in the future now. This is where it's going to go.
Yeah. So I have a big question for you, and I asked this to someone else. Do you think Wii Sports is probably one of the best party games of all time?
Yes. Yeah. It's up there.
It's up there. It's got to be, right? Like, I know Mario Party for sure. Maybe there's a few others, but I think Wii Sports really took hold of like that generation, really took hold of the like non-gamers were playing it, grandparents were playing it. And don't forget, go ahead, Matt. I'm going to pull something up as well.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, everybody's family members were playing it. Like, you'd go over for a family event that came out and you started playing those games. And like, that's why it sold so well too, because like, grandmas and grandpas were buying it and being like, oh, I can play, like Wii bowling, and I can play Wii tennis, Wii baseball.
And then the meta of breaking TVs with the Wii remote.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yep. Well, that's it. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it became so real that people, once again, this is kind of what I said before too. Nintendo nails it when it comes to immersion. Like, it brings you into it so much. People would get so amped up, they would literally throw their controller into the TV. It's like, you're not really playing baseball. Calm down.
It got really heated, but luckily none of my TVs were ruined by a Wii remote. But I did a couple times accidentally throw it off my hand somewhere. But luckily I didn't break the TV. But,
well, that's why they added the strap, right? The strap wasn't there at first. You had to get that.
It was a big thing that they kept doing news reports about people breaking TVs. I think this guy's gonna break his TV in a second. This is what, 2006?
I'm sure.
There it goes. Ooh, that was a bad one.
Yeah, 2006. Boom.
Now we go into Xbox 360 land. Any memories, connection to this controller?
Yes.
To be honest, very good controller. Very good controller.
So Xbox 360 was right when I got back into gaming more. I picked that up because Red Dead Redemption had come out. I can't remember when that came out. Was that 2009? Gosh, I don't remember. But anyway, Red Dead Redemption was one of the major reasons why I wanted to get an Xbox. I wanted to play this really realistic cowboy game. It looked like it had all the elements. It was made by Rockstar, which they always had fantastic storylines. So I picked up an Xbox. oh man, did I fall in love with all the games in that collection. And I love the controllers. They fixed the problems of the bulkiness from the first one. It felt smooth, it felt slick. I was always a PlayStation fan anyway. And like now I'm like, okay, I'm an Xbox 360 fan because this controller is awesome. It's doing everything that I want it to do. I'm playing some really knockout games that PlayStation doesn't even have. Here we go.
So my PC, so this is a fake Xbox 360 controller that I use for my
Okay.
PC, but it's literally like identical. But I'm so for when I play, because Matt, I play on the PC too. Um, this cost me, by the way, $15 on Amazon. This controller,
Nice.
and it's really the best USB like just for a computer. And I love it. I just love the feel of like the Xbox 360 setup. Like it actually was a
Mm-hmm.
very good controller. Very underrated, I think. Doesn't get enough
Yeah.
praise for how easy it was to hold and how great it was. Now, hold on a second. I need to pull up one before we get into the Wii U. We're on the back nine right now.
Yep.
I forgot one controller we need to talk about. We need to talk about the PlayStation controller. And I know I didn't pull up the original PS1, but what are your memories of the PS4 DualShock or just the PS1 controller? Any good memories with this? And what did you
Well,
think of this?
PS1, we cover the PS1 real quickly. Like this one was, you're playing the first, like some of the first 3D games without a joystick. Like you had Resident Evil and you had survival horror games like that. So you're running around with that one. So it's a decent controller. I still prefer that when I play the original PlayStation 1 games over the DualShock version. I just feel like with the directional pad, have a better, I don't know if it's like a just better comfort zone for playing it instead of using the DualShock controllers, because sometimes they weren't that great then. As it progressed, you moved on to PlayStation 2, 3, and 4, then DualShock's the way to go. Like I always use one of those. The newest one, like you're just showing a picture of a PlayStation 4 controller, really cool how they mapped it out, how it has that touch sensor on it. I also love the fact that they started adding the speakers into them. So like if you're playing the Resident Evil 2 remake, certain characters are calling you on their handheld radio and it's coming through your controller. So you're hearing like Marvin, like in the police department going, Leon, like, I need you back over here real
Yeah,
quick.
that
And
was
like,
cool.
all right. Yeah, that was neat. I was like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. And then all the key locking sounds and stuff, or the door opening sounds are coming through your controller. Once again, bringing that immersion to you and like getting you more into the game. So if you're wearing a headset and then you're playing like this and you got like your controllers rumbling. Oh, we didn't even touch on that, the rumble packs and stuff like that they started introducing. So you have the reactions and going on too. Fantastic. I mean,
It's
like
a really good game.
yeah, it's really good.
And surprised that with the PS5 they went like a different direction, but we'll talk about it real quick. I wanted to talk quickly about the Wii U, which definitely has to be mentioned. I don't know if you have any connection with the Wii U, but it was an odd controller. Basically, that was the Switch, sort of a prototype.
Yep.
What do you think of the Wii U? Did you ever have it? Did you ever play it?
I don't have experience with the Wii U. My brother has a Switch and I've tried it for a little bit. It's the Switch definitely seems more comfortable than that one from what I just even looking at it.
And then,
Like I think they no, you go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was going to say, this is obviously the Joy-Con, which was kind of like the evolution of the Wii remote, I would say.
Yeah.
It's pretty innovative. So you don't have a Switch, you said? You're not a big Switch guy?
I do not. I don't. My brother has one, and like there's a ton of games that I have yet to play. Like I really want to play the more of the recent Zelda games I haven't even touched yet. Like we're talking about like on the Wii and everything like that. Like the furthest I go with Zelda right now is the GameCube, and I think there's one on that I haven't even touched. But yeah, like I'm more focused in like the retro world of gaming right now. So Switch and stuff like that. PlayStation 4 is the furthest I've gone so far. Just because once again, Red Dead Redemption is like a big title that I've always wanted to play. So the second one came out. That's the reason why I got the PlayStation 4 and also the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Nice. Oh, great remake.
Yeah.
So do you have a PS5?
I do not.
What do you think now that we're at like the end of evolution? We've come to probably. I mean, listen, the Xbox controller doesn't really impress me. The new Xbox controller, it's like the Xbox One. It's the same
Hmm.
old story. I actually like the Xbox 360 controller more than the newer Xbox controller. But what are your thoughts of the PlayStation or any of the modern controllers that we have today?
Unfortunately, I can't really give an opinion on that. The new PlayStation one looks pretty sleek. I'm not really sure exactly, what it brings to the table that's different from the four, aside from looking like it's, off a space station. Uh, but that's the thing is like now we're like reaching this point too with Twitch and TikTok and all this streaming gaming and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, am I getting a PlayStation 5 or am I going and buying like a PC rig that I'm going to get topped up to play all these like next gen games? I'm kind of at that phase like, okay, like a lot of people have asked me, do I have a Twitch for gaming? I was like, oh well, I definitely need to get like myself a PC in order to set that up and like a whole little gaming setup in my room there. So do I buy a PlayStation 5? I don't know. Maybe I'll just go and spend my money on the computer and get that all set up and kind of play some, online games that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have a PS5. I like it. It's really comfortable, but I'll be honest, man, I haven't been playing my PS5 at all. Like, I barely play
Yeah.
it.
You're not the first person I've heard that from either.
Yeah, it's just sitting there. I play a lot of games on the PC, believe it or not, but I play a lot of like tycoon management games and like Steam games, like indie games, right? But I also play I have a CRT TV, and I play all my retro games the way they were supposed to be played. I play them on a CRT. So I find
Nice.
I find myself playing like my Saturn and my 64 the most, but yeah, I barely play the PlayStation. And like I said, I use this cheap Xbox fake controller more than I use the new
Yeah.
PS5 controller.
But that kind of comes back full circle to kind of like what we were talking about. Like there is something to be said about like all these retro games and the ease of playing them, the hook that they have for us, not necessarily like even like for nostalgia, but for like other people that are getting into the games now. Like they are playing these games that aren't 147-hour campaigns
Yeah.
that they have to learn a whole story for. Like they can just pick it up and they can just play Maniac Mansion for like 20 minutes and be like, oh, I had my fill for now. I'll come back to this later. And it's saved, it's right there, and it's a simple, easy game that you can get into the story real quick with.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, so Matt, we're almost at an hour. We've been talking a
Yep.
lot. I've been enjoying our conversation. To close kind of like a final thought, after us like talking through all the controllers, what are your thoughts just in general of the controller and how important it is to gaming? And do you think in the future we're going to be less using a controller and it's going to be there's going to be some different evolutions to the controller? But so give me a touch on how important controllers are, and then where do you see controllers evolving to in the next 10 to 15 years?
Controllers have always been like a comfort thing that you need. It needs to be comfortable so you can be involved in the game and kind of like bring that immersion in for you. Like so you're in it. Like if you have a controller that feels good in your hands and it is really responsive to the game that you're playing, you're not even going to notice you're using a controller. Which is where I think goes right into the second part of the question is like, will we have controllers in the future? Oculus and all that stuff that I'm seeing, and I've tried a little bit of. I don't think so. I think we're going to be getting to like full motion capture stuff, and the controller, if it doesn't even blend like the Oculus stuff is doing now, where like you can like move some of your fingers, you can see it representative, but you're still kind of holding on to two sticks. Like that'll go away soon at some point too, and it'll just be it mapping our hands, I think, and doing like a full read of that. So like it's the goal is to get us fully immersed into the games, and with VR, I think that's where everything's trending on going, and we're going to see ourselves just pretty much like Ready Player One, like just jumping right in and being able to do everything. So we will be the controller pretty much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know how I feel about that because there's just something so nostalgic about like holding the controller.
Oh, I agree.
Sitting on a
I
couch.
agree. Don't get me wrong.
And being like this. But you're right. I think that in the future that's going to go away. That's sad. But maybe, it'll be cool, those immersion games in the future. I don't know. We'll see.
The couple that I've played, I see where we're going. I'm super excited about it, but we're not there yet, which is why I go back to my couch and I play Nintendo. Like I think we're like maybe 5-10 years away from like being really into that world where it's like, okay, this is a whole nother thing. But like I said, this once again goes back to the first part. Some people don't want that. Like some people want to just be able to like, oh, I just got home from work. Let me just chill out for 20 minutes and play Tetris, you know?
Oh yeah.
And like then that'll always be there. Even if the controllers of the future go away, like we're always going to have these games in some form to play and pick up a controller with. Even if it'll be like Back to the Future 2, where it's like, you have to use your hands. That's a baby's toy.
Yeah, I'm excited. And it's funny. We've been doing this show for a while, and we never talked about controllers really. So I thought it was a really good topic today, Matt.
That was great. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and dude, I know that you're kind of like, I think. Let me share it, but just shout out your TikTok. Let us know, where you want to find us. I think that TikTok's kind of your main shtick, right? Give us a little background on that real quick. What we can expect from new videos for you before we head out, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So my TikTok is at Matty Newey, MattyNewy at TikTok. It's my home right now. I do live streams, vintage video games. You can expect videos, funny videos, and character videos coming out in the near future. What I like to do is I introduce a video for a game that people either ask for or I want to play, and then later on that week in a stream, I'll be playing the game that I've introduced for my video. So it kind of gives everybody a little bit of a lead in for what I'll be playing in the future. And then I add it to my rotation, which is a lot of fun. I do have a Twitch account now.
Oh,
same
great.
name, at Matty Newey. Yep. So you can check that out. No content yet, but I'm just setting it up for when I do jump into that avenue. So if people want to follow me on either one, fantastic. Love to have you, and I hope you enjoy the content.
Can you get it?
Awesome, dude. Yeah, and I'm excited to see your Twitch. Let me know, if you need any help with the Twitch world. And thanks for the follow, that something guy. I appreciate it. Or they hosted me. Sorry. But let's raid someone before we get out. And Matt, I want to thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really glad we connected. And I know that we're going to just keep DMing each other and talking and continuing to be like awesome parts of the retro community, especially on TikTok. And thanks for the follow, that guy. I appreciate it.
Eddie, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it, man. And Official Chica, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. We're just heading out, but I want to say that please check out Matt's stuff on TikTok. Again, I just shared his TikTok and his Twitch that'll be starting soon. And of course, I'll be back next Saturday. We have more guests coming. We have some more stuff, Matt. I have some exciting stuff happening in the next week. We have some really cool guests. One guest I'm looking to have is someone that's very much attached to the history of Sega and the gentleman that was part of the early marketing around the release of the Sega Genesis. So that's a surprise little tease coming up in the future. And then Genzo, thank you for gifting a 3-month tier 1 to Official Chica. Really appreciate that. And of course, you can find me on all things below. I'm on Twitter at LoveRetroBTW. I'm on Twitch at LoveRetroBTW. And where else am I? On TikTok at CafeBTW, which of course is this wonderful show. It's Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast. We'll see you next Saturday. Let's see who we're going to raid, Matt. We're going to send people to go to, let's see who's streaming right now. No one that I really know that's live. Oh, no, I got a guy. His name is 90s Nick. He's a really cool streamer. His channel is really cool too. So let's raid this guy, 90s Nick. And I want to thank everyone. And I want to thank, everyone for hanging out. Let's do that. Let's raid this dude. Matt, have a great weekend, my friend.
Thanks, bud.
Keep doing your thing on TikTok, and I'm sure we'll do this again. I have a tease for a show that I'm going to be doing, and I want to involve you and a bunch of other TikTokers from the retro world. I promise you're going to love it. Let's raid 90s Nick right now. Give him some love. Tell him how much you love retro games. And we'll see everyone next Saturday. Take care. All right, we raided. Going to stop streaming.